go have some fun.
And we're back.
And we're back.
Welcome, episode 2.
Episode 2.
We thank you all for listening to episode 1. It was fantastic, the responses that we got. So we're recording this. We're recording this about 4 days after we posted episode 1. So it's still fresh in our minds, and we've got a few new topics today. Well, mainly one topic, but I think we're going to branch out a little bit. And so you can go ahead and introduce what that is.
Yeah, so I think being episode 2 now, we've sort of passed that milestone of actually posting episode 1, because we could have sat on episode 1 and calling it a practice for forever, really.
Yeah, we really could
just sort
have,
of
but
afraid to actually post it online. So I think we've taken the courage and we've posted it, put those raw thoughts on the internet for people to judge, and we just want to talk about that whole idea of the fear of failing versus the fear of public opinion.
I think that kind of directly correlates to how we were kind of feeling. I think in that, posting something, there's going to be people judging you, and the differences between saying something online and saying something in person, I think, is real.
Exactly.
So we'll highlight that today as well, and kind of talk about either our personal experience with it or just talk about it in general. I think is a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. Because I think neither of us were afraid of failing. You can't really fail a conversation. It's more like, I think it was just the fear of what people will think of that conversation.
Exactly.
So,
and I was glad that we got really good responses, and obviously a lot of requests to be guests as well. But we are going to upgrade our setup so that we can have more people here.
3 mics first.
Yeah,
otherwise
we've got 1 currently, so we need another 2. But other than that, we got some lighting as well. So if anyone is watching on the video, hopefully you can see us better and we look more beautiful than ever. So first of all, we'll get into, I think, posting to the internet was a big topic of discussion that we had before we even started the podcast. In terms of what opportunities posting to the internet can bring and the differences between posting to the internet and actually, talking.
Posting to the internet under your name, not like a fake alias.
Yeah, not ghostwriting or anything like that. I think
not like being a keyboard warrior, actually taking responsibility for what you're posting, having your name behind it. That's why we have the camera to take full ownership of what we're posting. We're not
cowards.
We're not faking. We're not faking anything. We're not hiding anything.
No. This is it's real. We're having discussions. I think it's fear of failing, and then the fear of public judgment and criticism that kind of we thought we would talk about today, just because it's very. It has a lot of depth to it. I think we can kind of bring some.
Because I think you were trying to sort of say that it goes hand in hand.
Yes,
but I
was missing the term. But yeah. That kind of thing.
I think even as just a basic, simple anecdote for myself, basketball. Like when I played basketball at the primary school, I play pretty much every night, and occasionally from time to time there'll be no one else. And it's those times where I'm really not afraid to miss 100% of my shots.
Yeah.
Because I know that
there's a joke there, but I won't take it. Go.
I know ultimately that I need to miss those shots to improve.
Yeah.
But like immediately, as soon as there's somebody else there, I don't know if it's just me, but in the back of my head, there's just the thought of if I miss, they're going to judge me for
notice you
not being good at basketball, which
exactly.
I'm trying to get better, right?
You're kind of shaping people's opinions of you when you fail, I think. And I think that's what people are very scared of in terms of fear of failing.
And the internet has just like brought the public, on steroids.
Yeah, public eye. That's probably what people are most afraid of. Which I think probably an example for me is, I've got 2 actually, although I think you could probably relate to one of them, because you said that public speaking is like massive. Like it's probably one of the biggest stages that you can actually fail on.
Especially... keep going.
And I just thought that, that a lot of people fear death more than public speaking, which to me is really strange. Like I definitely fear death more than probably anything else. And I think that getting onto sidestepping a little bit from that, I think that fearing death is because people are fearing that they haven't done enough with their life. And that may sound really, really deep.
Yeah, but no, I see where you're coming from.
But it's like, have I done enough with my life? Like, am I happy with the way that things have gone? You know, have I done everything that I wanted to do? Like, obviously, you know, people our age, we've got so much more stuff to do than, you know, what we think we have to do even. Like, there's so much stuff that's going to come out of nowhere and you're going to be like, oh, cool. Like, I didn't know I could do this, or, you know, I haven't seen the opportunities that have been presented to me. But yeah, sorry, I did interrupt you, so you can continue.
Oh no, it's okay. I think I lost my train of thought. I was going with the flow. To me,
I kind of just talk for a while, and you know, I think that the public speaking, like I'm perfectly fine with public speaking. I think that there is that case of, if you do fail, there's a lot of people that are just staring at you. And I think it's all the eyes looking at you that it's like, oh, this is really scary. Like, I think people are just more... I don't think, in terms of public speaking, I think it's not so much people being scared of talking to people. I think talking to people is quite easy, but actually talking on a level that either people understand you or that they agree with you is difficult. And with a podcast, I think that's kind of something that we have to be wary of, but at the same time, we're voicing our own opinions. Yeah. And it's the not worrying about what other people think. It's more so voicing our thoughts and ideas to a bunch of people that we have either met or never met before, and not really expecting anything.
But I think just in doing so, that we're going to talk to the people who sort of, you know, relate to us the most, because the internet is full of people, right? Like 7 billion, or I don't know, 6.5. Not everyone's connected, but there's a large portion of people who are connected.
It's like closer to 8 now.
8?
I think so, yeah.
A lot of people. Yeah. And the idea is we're not going to be able to talk to everyone, and we're not going to be able to agree with everybody. So
we sometimes don't even agree with each other. So
no, exactly. Yeah. And there's going to be people who are going to listen and be upset at what we say because it doesn't align with their beliefs. But we're not talking to those people.
No.
We're talking to, you know, likely the people who agree with us.
Our homies. We're talking to the ones that matter.
And yeah, we're not trying to talk to everybody, because that way we're talking to nobody. So,
but whoever listens in, we're grateful, because obviously, you know, we are working hard at this. But in saying that, if you're
willing to listen to a new perspective and not let your beliefs sort of anger you when you're listening to this, and you're willing to
cloud your judgment a little bit,
accept some new opinions for the next 60 minutes, then you're more than welcome to listen. You know, just don't be too triggered, please.
Yeah. Well, that's another topic separately. We're not getting into that. No.
PC culture. Not today. Not today.
So I think, you know, you were going to talk about entrepreneurship as well, because obviously my man here is a entrepreneur.
And he's got a bit entrepreneurial minded.
Yes, you've got a bit of experience. Not we have. You've got a bit of experience. I thought you were going to talk about how, you know, fear of failing. Well, you can't. I think as an entrepreneur, don't get me wrong. I think, you know, I don't think you can be afraid of failing as an entrepreneur, because you kind of have to expect to fail. You got to be comfortable with it. You have to expect to fail, because that's how you actually grow. And that's another completely different topic. Like, I think people fear failing, but it's the only way you actually learn. And, you know, in the jobs, I fail all the time at work. I'm sure you do as well. Like, there's things that you do, and the things that you do, and you're like, oh, okay, I got to remember that I don't do that for next time. And then I think people will get into their heads like, I was just really tired. Like, I wasn't paying attention. That's why I failed. But it's like, I think if you do something enough times, you're not going to fail again. And I think that, you know, it's all practice makes perfect as well. Yeah. And that your fear of public judgment and criticism is kind of a bit void when you actually either enjoy what you're doing, or you've failed enough times to remember that it's okay to fail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, even just talking about that point of fearing missing out on life after you die, or like before you die, everyone in like who's coming up to that stage of death, they always tell you that it's the things that they didn't do that they regret the most.
Yep.
And a lot of the time that just purely comes from fear. Like, this is something what we've wanted to do for a year, podcasting.
Very long and annoying process of,
and I think
where do we get to do
it? A big portion of it, because we knew that these conversations were a bit unique, a bit odd,
yeah,
a bit outside the.
I think this
natural
conversation socially is quite acceptable, and I think that whatever deems a conversation acceptable for me is going to be completely different to what other people think of a conversation, which is completely normal. Obviously, that's the whole part of like public judgment and whether or not you want to do something or not, just because you think you're going to get judged by it.
Exactly. But I think we would regret this more if we didn't do it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like this is something that, again, I think the main message here is that we had feared failing, or not feared failing. We'd feared judgment. I think you couldn't really fail talking, as you said.
Yeah.
I think it was more so that we feared. I wouldn't even say fear is the right word, but we were afraid of judgment, and I think that's kind of what put us. The same
Fear,
word, yes. They're the same word. Don't get me started. Okay, I'd explain the differences, but I can't be bothered. There's a certain element to podcasting in that you can't really fail what you say, but you can be judged for what you say. But with our audiences, obviously, we understand that there is going to be differences of opinion, and we got some. I am running the Instagram account, and I did get some great tips, and obviously, as I said before. Guests that would be interested in coming on. So, hey, look, we did something right the first time. And obviously, if we keep talking the way that we're talking, there's more opportunities for us. There's progress, exactly.
Because I think while this is a bit of a creative project at the moment, I think both of us would be happy to take this, into something bigger than it is.
Yeah, absolutely. If it ever got to that stage.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But for now, this is more of like I think we're filming every single, Saturday?
Yeah.
Every Saturday, we just catch up and talk.
Just for fun.
And it's basically, if we weren't recording, we'd just be talking probably the same again. So this is more of a listening into our kind of conversations and understanding what's going on.
But it's very similar to entrepreneurship in that you have to create your own opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Like we want this to be something bigger. Like we'd enjoy that.
Of
course. Like without actually taking that, creating the opportunity for ourselves and posting it on the internet, we'd have no chance, right?
Oh,
it would just be a conversation that we had and that, no one else is going to be able to listen to. But this way, people were able to listen to it and it might catch on, it may not.
Yeah.
But the only thing is, we've given ourselves the opportunity for it to catch on.
Yeah.
And even with the internet has brought opportunities to everybody. And sort of tying this in with entrepreneurship, everybody sort of has a passion. If it's drawing, if it's
cats.
Cats is a big one.
Cats, they're awesome.
I'm sort of getting this topic actually from the Netflix documentary on meme cats and how people actually created cat influencers and they made a job from their own cat.
Yep.
But it's that whole idea of they could have feared posting that on the internet and being judged for, I don't know, for their cat. In this sense, it's kind of easy because you're sort of masking it through a cat.
Yeah.
But if they didn't initially post their cat to the internet, they would never have the chance to, make a job from it,
you
right?
You have to take risks in order to get rewards.
And in saying that, the risks are the fear of people judging you negatively.
Yes.
And as we said, people are going to judge us negatively.
And people are afraid of that.
Because everybody perceives things differently.
Yeah.
So you sort of have to understand that when you're posting something, you're not going to please everybody. We know we're not going to please everybody.
No.
And I think that's even similar to public speaking, because one thing that I found interesting was how similar this feels to public speaking.
Yes.
Despite being two of us in the room,
I'm
still getting that
But we know we're also talking to other people.
Yeah.
Because I think it's basically, we're sitting in chairs talking to each other, but we then also know that people are listening to us talk. And so while I was actually listening to us speak just then, I was thinking of another way that I could put another way that I could say about why people are kind of afraid of failing, and I think where that all stems from is probably high school. I mean, people are so concerned with ATARs in high school, and I still under the opinion that they really do not matter at all. But hey, I think people are afraid to put their hand up in class because, if a teacher asks a question like, oh, what does this equal? And you get it wrong, you know, I think there's that stereotype that you kind of have to laugh at the person that gets it wrong. Like that's something that's embedded in high school. Like, oh, this person doesn't know the answer to that question. They said the opposite of what the answer should have been. You know, they were wrong. They weren't wrong. They failed. Well, they were wrong. That's what failing means. But
they learned, right?
Exactly, they learned.
They now know the right answer.
Exactly.
And the thing is, because they failed, I guarantee you that they're the only one in that class who is going to remember the answer more than anybody else. Yep. Because it is just sort of strengthened and reinforced that answer into them. Because absolutely. They failed.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, you know, I've had my own experiences with that in high school. I'm certain you have as well, where you've put your hand up and you're like, oh yeah, I've got this answer. Like you just, hell yeah, miss or sir, whatever. What do you call your teacher?
It.
You
know that St. Peter's actually, sidebar, you know that they actually, Christian told me this, you're not allowed to say sir and miss anymore.
Yeah.
You have to call them by their name, like Miss, you know, Chapman. You can't just say miss.
Really?
He actually got penalized for saying it. Like,
what?
That's how PC it's getting. Like, that's not even a pronoun you can use anymore.
PC.
Politically correct. Or like, they're just trying to control you.
No, I don't. No, I knew what PC meant. I was like, you can't use that anymore.
Has Alicia told you that?
No. Why would she tell me that?
Oh, because it's something that needs to be talked about.
I think she's probably as professional as I am when I'm addressing people. So,
oh, okay.
Hey.
I was always a big miss or sir kind of guy.
I'd call all misses, I would call by their last names, obviously, for teachers, but all male teachers I just call sir. You know, they'd accept it. I don't understand. This is confusing to me. I'm
just surprised there was an issue that had to be brought, and it's an issue that's actually penalized with like detentions now. Like you can actually
saying sir or miss.
Yes.
What about madame?
I'm sure that comes
or madam.
The same thing. I don't know.
Or gentleman. Gentleman.
I already told Chris he needs to come up with his own pronoun and enforce it on teachers.
It's a great idea.
Well, that's just me being facetious.
No, that's really good. I enjoy that. Yeah.
But yeah, back to on the topic of high school. I do agree that even I sort of put my hand down, or didn't put my hand up, just out of fear of failing. Because, you know, as soon as you put your hand up, you're putting yourself in the limelight to be judged. And I think everybody just doesn't want to be in that light because...
And I think...
some, like, strange crippling nervousness comes over you and you know that you can... Like, it just messes you up even if you weren't going to be messed up. And that's why I don't like public speaking. Because even though I can speak publicly... Yeah. The fear of it doesn't allow me to do it.
Yeah. You're like, so it's like I'm going to mess up at some point. I'm going to say something incorrect.
To do good at public speaking, you kind of have to overcome that fear of it. Otherwise, it's like a perpetual cycle of you fear it, it makes you worse, which makes you fear it more. Yeah. So until you overcome or like one of those barriers, you either get really good at it or you just stop fearing it. You're not going to turn that into a positive and become better at it.
Like, genuinely, I think, like, I personally think I'm great at public speaking. And, you know, as I said before, I feel death way more than I fear public speaking.
But I think that's because you're very confident with it. That sort of created that positive cycle.
I think I'm very used to talking, as a lot of people listening would know, that I do enjoy to talk a lot. And I often go on rants, especially if it's about, like, science or something that I very much care about. And I think I've just gotten used to the fact that people are listening to me and I'm talking about what I want to talk about, not necessarily what they want to hear, but if I'm talking about what I want to talk about, I'm happy. And I think that I can't really mess up in what I'm talking about, or about anything that I'm talking about. And I was also going to say, in terms of high school, I was thinking about something else. You know when, like, no one puts their hand up and the teacher says, all right, I'm just going to select someone to give me the answer.
Do you feel that in yourself?
But I think I am proud of all teachers for doing that. And do you know why?
No, please enlighten me.
You looked at me so like
I'm very
shocked.
Ready to be enlightened.
I think teachers actually giving people should be surprised of what they know. If you're in a classroom and you don't think you know the answer, the amount of times that I've just said something random when a teacher's pointed to me and it's been correct, just because like either my subconscious or myself, I just know it. I'm just like, yeah, but I'm not going to put my hand up, or I don't think this is the correct answer. I'm not going to say it. You say it and you fail. You're learning from those experiences. It's not like, a teacher's choosing you to pick on you. They're choosing you to help you, because if you're putting your hand up, they're training you for later in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are certain situations when you're an adult where you have to make decisions or give answers to specific, like even in university right now, like I fail all the time. Not in terms of grades, but I still fail all the time. Like, there'd be something that I'd say in like a report or when I'm going to a lecture and answering a question that usually the lecturer asks someone to put their hand up, and there's like 200 people in the room, so someone always does. But that odd chance that he picks someone, that person is so afraid to speak because they think they're going to get the answer wrong, that it's like, put your hand up and say something. No one's going to, especially in that environment where you're all adults and you automatically know what learning means. I don't think anyone's going to laugh at you just because you've got an answer wrong because the teacher picked you. Because you should expect that person to get that answer wrong if they don't have their hand up. That's the point. And I think that it's automatically, people are kind of ashamed if they get an answer wrong. And that's I think
if you're a good teacher, like you've probably been trained for it, but I think that unless they get it like extremely wrong, right? Like if they're like in the ballpark, or even if they get it extremely wrong, you sort of tell them they're right anyway, or like you sort of explain to them that
like you were very close.
that courage, and like they like, because original thought is something that people are afraid of, right?
Yep,
because
definitely
at this point, science, as I mentioned, has proven a lot of things. And it seems
it ruins a lot of things.
It seems there's like one answer for everything, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the moment even if you like, you miss the mark, you just completely miss the mark. Because somebody was making this argument that somebody who spells cat, K-A-T, and somebody who spells cat, X-Y-Z, are both incorrect. Even though the person who was slightly basically on the mark is basically criticized as much because they're both wrong, right? Because there's only one right way.
Yes, to do something.
And like this whole idea of like, you can't even be slightly off the mark because you'll be incorrect has just made it even harder to fail, because it's like...
But then it's like there's always those teachers that say there's not one right answer. That there's always multiple answers for the same thing.
Unless you're doing like, I don't know, history or something, or some like liberal arts degree.
Even history or liberal arts, they're going to be like, oh, what year did this happen? If you say 1 year ahead of that, it's not correct.
And there's an exam at the end, even in liberal arts, which means there has to be some sort of right answer.
There has to be a right answer, because there is a right answer to everything. I think the level on which an answer is accepted is whether or not you put enough detail into that answer, which is kind of what I think high school prepares you for anyway. Like, have you put enough... I remember when I was taking... This is a side note. When I was taking biology, I remember I'd get the answer correct, but I wouldn't put enough detail in it, so I wouldn't get full marks. And I think that's much the same as, there's not all right answers are the right answer. I think that there is a level of how much depth you put into a response that you give. Like, even in conversations, like one of our responses to each other, like your response to me may not be what I consider the right answer from my perspective, because either you haven't put enough depth into it, or you've literally given me completely the wrong topic. Like, it's a completely different discipline you're talking about, and I've got no clue what you're talking about. So I, as the teacher, say, no, he's got it all wrong, or yep, he's kind of on the money, but I would like more info on this.
Yeah, and I think liberal arts degrees, and subjects in particular, are just good because they allow for original thoughts and different perspectives. Because you could look at, like, if you're making someone in the future is going to be writing a essay on COVID. It's going to be a thing, right? It's going to
I've written one. I've done it already.
But like, even in history classes, COVID it'll be a historical moment, right?
Yes, it will be.
Someone who sort of sees life in a positive manner and has, sees a silver lining to things, will write an essay talking about the benefits of how the environment has benefited. Carbon emissions have been reduced.
Well, they have been.
But
I can see that.
I think the connotation to COVID will be that it was an evil, right?
It was, yeah.
And the fact that you've taken the boldness and the risk to write it in a positive light is something that needs to be rewarded,
Yeah. And then there's the judgment that stems from that. Like, how dare you write about something so evil in a positive manner? That's terrible.
Especially if you watch the news.
That's the same as
the only way you can think about COVID is in a fearful manner.
That's the same as like all diabolical leaders of the world, like say like Trump, Hitler, Stalin, Kim Jong-un. Like they've all got their negative sides. Definitely some of the middle ones that I said there, but history is they've done something really good for that country. Or like they were a great leader. Like they had great public speaking, but obviously they did terrible things. And whether or not you see those history reports of like I've said to someone before, and this is really bold me saying this. Like Hitler was a terrible person, but he was a great public speaker. He knew how to get an audience.
Oh, you can't take it away from him.
Exactly, but people would yell at me for saying that. How dare you say he's a brilliant public speaker? He was a horrible human being. I understand he was a terrible human being. What he did was terrible. But you can't take away the fact that he was, great. Same with Trump. Like, people think, he's an idiot. Like, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's done wonders for America's economy. He has actually helped them in terms of economy. With probably social aspect, he's probably not so good. Like, that's in the news. You can look at the proof of that in the news and you're like, yeah, no. When it comes to actual economy and, the business side of it, he understands everything. And there's always going to be a negative and a positive to any situation. And I think you kind of have to look at both. And people that only look at one are kind of naive.
But yeah, I don't want to talk about politics too much, but I think it's a good example of fear of failing.
Well, yeah, I don't want to talk about politics.
When you put yourself on a public stage like the president or the prime minister, the country's pretty much divided half anyway. So you're going to be judged by half the country.
Oh, absolutely.
That must be a tough thing to overcome.
Oh, it has to be.
To even become like that, to become a leader, you have to know that.
But even imagine
people are going to judge you.
Imagine speaking to an entire country. You're speaking to an entire country. Like, I know you just got wheezy thinking about that, didn't you?
The pressure must be insane.
Like imagine, like, obviously you'd have to be passionate about what you're doing to speak to an entire country. Or, like, completely out of your mind. I don't know. Whichever one suits you, I guess. But imagine, like, Trump or Obama or even, ScoMo talking about anything to, like, this entire group of people. Like, that. This is public speaking. I'm not talking about politics right now because I don't want to talk about politics. That was just a side note in terms of,
It was just an easy example everyone can relate to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that you've got... That's kind of the thing. Like, why ever get into a role if you're afraid of public speaking? Why? Because, they've obviously pushed themselves and they want to help the country that they live in. I think that's something about pride in that too, I guess. But there was also another topic.
But just on that, do you think... Well, clearly you could never be a politician if you can't public speak and you can't overcome that fear.
But see, I'm able to public speak, but I would never become a politician because I'm not interested in politics. Well, I am, but I'm not.
I'm not saying you have to be.
I'd never get into politics that way.
But can you succeed? Because this is sort of entrepreneurship again. Can you succeed in something you love if you're not willing to be in the public eye? Because you can't really be a famous artist if you're never in the public eye. It's sort of a whole idea of your worth is measured by how many people know you.
I have got a perfect example. Sia. Sia was massively famous singer. I believe she's Australian. I can't remember. Pretty sure she is. I think she's shown her face at one event in like 8 years. She's incredibly famous. She's on hit tracks all around the world. Like even, Latino music and, you've got Spanish music, which is roughly the same. But hey, there's so many... She's hit so many markets and she hasn't shown her face. There's a girl playing her everywhere she goes that's dancing in the music videos, everything like that.
But then you could argue that she's made it and she's successful, but she's not like taking ownership of that. She's not herself. Like, it's basically like living a double life. It's like a Hannah Montana situation.
But she's shown up to interviews, but she doesn't show her face. She's got the hair that covers her face, that comes down over her eyes. So she only shows her nose and below.
But would you ever want to live a life like that where you have to just... Because you know when she's with her friends, she's not Sia. She's somebody else. She's probably, I don't know.
Well, she could be Sia.
Whatever her name is.
That's her forever personality. It's just Sia. But I think I'd never want to live like that. But that's up to her, I guess. I guess she would. It's the whole thing about choices and whether or not, and you ready for this segue?
Go for it.
Conforming. Okay.
Okay.
Conforming, because we did have a conversation about this. I think we have kind of touched on it a little bit, but people conforming to dress codes, everywhere, like schools, people conforming to school dress codes. I think it's kind of an exception, but what makes you cool, what makes you not cool, and how you speak to each other, and the ideas that you give to each other, whether or not they conform to society's expectations of you or society's expectations as a whole of what people should think.
Because I think even if you look, when you're walking through the city, you'll notice that most people, even myself included, wear primarily grayscale clothing.
Yeah.
And that way you just sort of blend in. There's no way... And there's the whole idea of, in the back of your mind that nobody actually cares what you're wearing.
No.
Everyone's so busy in their own lives.
Yeah.
But you just put this story in your head that that cripples you. That people actually care what you wear, and that you're not going to wear this yellow jumper because I wore last episode. Because even when I wore it to work, one of the older gentlemen was like, "Isn't that a little bit too bright?" And I was like, "You're wearing high vis."
That's kind of like...
But the whole idea is because high vis is considered normal and is sort of conforming, that even though it's extremely bright, it's normal. Whereas me wearing a yellow jumper because I felt like, I don't know, brightening up my surroundings through what I wear. Yeah. That's
you're a light. You're a light. You're a bright light.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think that conforming to dress is kind of like, oh, I've got to have the latest sneakers. I've got to have latest hairstyles, and
although what we're talking about right now, this is all set by the market. This is like marketing.
Yes,
we talked about last episode. Because think about it. What is considered normal is what is shown to us on television.
Yep, exactly. How we were brought up as well, I think. Parents, grandparents.
You take a moment.
My God.
Because I think now that... It's weird because now that I think about it, like, I've started wearing more colours recently. Because I don't know, it brightened up my day, like I said. Also, excuse my croaky voice, I'm a little bit sore. It's not COVID. Got tested. But it is a little bit...
Gotta let the audience know that. It's a
little bit... just... Because these people are close to us, they might be concerned. It's not COVID, so it's okay.
Not, yeah.
But it's a little bit croaky. It's like muddling my words a bit, but...
Yeah.
But I don't use social media, I haven't used in the last 4 or 5 months. And I don't watch the news. And ever since I stopped, particularly social media, I haven't been afraid to wear as much colours. And I think it's because I haven't been seeing what is considered normal, that I'm sort of come to the point where I'm actually doing what I want purely from what I feel comfortable with, not with what I think other people are comfortable with.
Yeah. I think that I kind of got it into my head that I wear a lot of the same clothes. Like, you'd notice that I wear like jeans, usually the same jeans, and like the same shirt or same jumper. I think it's just because I feel comfortable in those clothes, and like I have definitely other ways of expressing myself. Like, especially like I enjoy public speaking. Like, I'm not afraid of speaking to other people. Definitely not. Like, I have conversations with strangers all the time, which obviously stranger danger. You're not supposed to, but I do. And I think that there's I don't necessarily think that I conform, even though socially people would say that I do. And I don't conform to the way that I speak. Like, obviously, I've said stuff that's probably people wouldn't agree with. And I'm sure you've said stuff that people wouldn't agree with either. Not necessarily to the same level, but we've all done that. And, there was probably a stage in our lives where we did conform at one point or another. Like, I think the ultimate rebellious is where you didn't wear your tie to school. Like, sure, that's like completely not conforming, right?
Don't put your blazer on.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I just did it because I didn't find it comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't do it to be like, tell it to the man. I just did it because the blazer wasn't comfortable.
Exactly.
Like, I wore my tie religiously because I found it comfortable.
See,
strangely enough.
Weirdly, I feel way more comfortable in a suit now, like in a blazer and tie, than I did before. Whether or not that's an age thing, I don't know. But I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable as well coming out of high school. I think I'm a lot more confident than I was. I think that's probably just an age thing in that, you know, you've kind of learnt your lessons of like, oh, like I failed a lot, but I've learned a lot too. You know, that kind of conforming aspect it's different to how I thought that after high school would be, in that, you know, I think in university and outside of university, I think you're a lot more different than you have been in the past, and that your ideas are becoming more different. The way you dress is definitely becoming more different. Like you're becoming older. You know, you have older friends, older family. And I think you can, like, my mum is a nurse, and I can have a lot more in-depth discussions with her than I could in high school, just because now I know more.
Although on that topic, I think it's fair to agree that we're both quite playful and quite childish.
Oh, I'm so playful.
Yeah, you know, we laugh a lot. Especially when we're in the store, we're not afraid to, you know, muck around a little bit. In a respectful,
So before recording this, I got here about an hour and a half ago, and all we've done is probably procrastinate without the mic on. But the discussions that we've had, my God.
Oh, even just like the songs we sang and
the
vocal exercises we performed.
Yeah. I'll see. I might post those. We'll see. We'll see.
But on that, I think, as you mentioned, as we get older, and I think as people get older, because of those stigmas that, you know, an adult is an adult and a child is a child, adults tend to be a little bit less, they just tend to seem more, especially in the public eye, they seem to be more uptight, and they don't smile as much. And I think, as you know, as someone who does smile quite a lot, you feel like maybe people think of you like a man-child.
Yeah.
And a man-child, for some strange reason, has a negative connotation to it. It's like, because you're a man and because you're older, you're not supposed to be laughing and making like edgy jokes and humorous.
See, I would call myself uptight sometimes. Like, I can definitely be uptight, and I know people know what I'm talking about. But then there's that completely other side of me where I'm like, you can both be responsible and playful at the same time. There's not necessarily a barrier there that stops you from being both. Like, there's times
we're not going around breaking windows and stuff. We're just responsibly having a laugh.
That's called crime. That's not called being playful.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
Yeah,
I agree. But like, would you like, just unpacking that? You said from time to time you can be uptight.
Yeah.
Where does that tightness come from? Does that come from the idea of being judged, or?
No, I think that's like depending on what mood I'm in, like whether or not like I'm in a bad mood or a good mood, and yeah, that happens to everybody. Not everyone can be in a good mood the entirety of their lives or the entirety of their day even. Like, there's going to be a time in your day where you're like, oh yeah, like, don't like this part of the day. Let's move on to the next part of the day. And someone will tell you to do something. It's just like, no, I can't. I've got to finish this. Or I've got to do that before I can do any of this. And I think that's kind of responsibility. That's not you being uptight. I think uptightedness, I don't even know if that's a real word, to be honest. It sounds like it. That's more so you being responsible because you know you have to do something first. And then people laugh at you for being responsible, but you're like, no, I'm an adult. Like, I deserve to be responsible and have fun at the same time. I think that's what I do with my job too. Like, I'm responsible. I do all my work, but I still talk. I still joke around. Like, I do all that stuff. And I think that people that, as you were saying before, like, there's being comfortable in your own skin and not having to worry about, you know, conforming to anything. I think that's something that you learn with time.
Although paradoxically to that, and being comfortable with yourself expressing yourself.
We did have this discussion. I'm excited for this. Go on.
Yeah, I brought it to your attention.
You did, yes.
I found Scandinavia quite fascinating because, like I said, find happiness quite a interesting topic and one that needs to be explored by a lot of people, I think. Yeah. And Scandinavia continues to rank top 5, top 7 in the happiness charts since 2012 when happiness really started being measured. But interestingly enough, they're one of the most conformist countries in the world because, not sure if you've heard this, but the whole idea of the Jante law. The Jante law is kind of like the 10 Commandments that really all Scandinavians hold quite closely, which in summary basically say you are not to be anything different. You are like everybody else. Do not stand out.
You're not special.
You're not special.
Yeah.
So the idea is, and if you look at images and like stories from people in Scandinavia, they'll tell you everybody wears grayscale or beige. Yeah. Everybody quite literally looks the same. And especially with a population of 5 million, they are actually quite, they're quite the same race. Okay? Yeah. Like they're pretty much all blonde-haired, blue-eyed white people, right?
Yeah, they look very much the same.
And they all dress the same, and no one stands out because like the Jante law is it's held to a social
very high regard,
high standard, like in the in society. And in saying that, they're strangely the happiest people, right? They don't conform. I mean, they do conform like to the highest possible standard, but they're also happiest.
Yeah. And
so like, what's this strange paradox?
Does conformism equal happiness? Can you really be happy if you are conforming?
Is it because everybody... I'm just having this thought now, actually. Is it because everybody is the same that there's no longer a fear of being judged? And that because you're no longer living in that fear of judgment, that you're actually very content with yourself and happy?
That makes so much sense.
And living in a society where, especially now in 2020, where you're sort of told to be different, you're told that you're special and unique, that because everybody thinks that they're special and unique...
Why does that sound like a makeup ad?
That you just fear being judged because you think you're so different because you've been told your entire life, especially the first 5 years is extremely formative.
Oh, yeah,
and like absolutely. Parents now... They're very, very sort of...
It's where you learn the majority of your information. Like,
exactly. It shapes you quite strong.
Lot.
Like if you really have to sort of change yourself, you really have to go to a psychologist to work out what happened in those first 5 years and change that.
Like your first, I think it's 20 years are the most informative. That's the most informative time of your life. Like you're learning everything. And I'm 20, I'm obviously still learning stuff, but I think I learned the majority of not what I know, but what is expected of me in my first 18 years, whether or not that be socially, with friends, academic-wise. I think that's something that I'm not sure how it works in Scandinavia. Obviously, you're probably more familiar with it than I am since you brought it up to me. But in terms of, how do you think in terms of how Scandinavia... either approaches academic or anything like that? Are there people are expected to take the same classes? They're expected to know the same things, or is it that level kind of conformity? Or
Scandinavia is very. You go to school, you take a gap year, you go to college, you finish college, you do a master's. Especially education in Scandinavia and Europe in general is very cheap, so everyone does masters. Yeah. You do a master's, you get a job, you get married by 30, you have kids by 32. You stick in the job and you grow up. It is very un-entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
But they're the happiest. And in our society, I'm entrepreneurial, and I've mentioned, at this stage in my life, I'm actually quite happy and quite content working for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I find myself falling into this sort of framework that maybe a Scandinavian would, but also being happier because of it. So is this idea of... because...
I feel like there's times where you need to conform and times that you don't, though. I think the way that they probably perceive it is that, these people are also happy. Shouldn't I be doing what they're doing? Or should I be doing what this person's doing? You see someone on, obviously you don't use social media a lot. I use it a little bit. But in terms of, why... is this person's doing this? Should I go out and do that? Should I conform to what they do? Because obviously they look really happy. I enjoy what that person's doing. I'm going to go do it as well. Maybe that's their point of view in that you can have you can be happy because you know that the people that are also doing it with you are being happy. Like there's that notion that you're conforming, but you know that everyone around you is also happy and they're doing the exact same thing. So no one's really different. It's that, again, you don't really fear too much because you know that no one's really going to be judging you for what you're doing because everyone's doing the exact same thing. Like, it's the exact same thing in, like, you know, I'm guessing that, you know, in any particular sport, like, I don't think sports people really judge each other too much just because they're all practicing the exact same thing. They know exactly what each other's doing. It's whether or not who can anticipate what the other person's doing first. And that's kind of like the ultimate point is that, you know, you can have people conforming to do something, but you're always gonna know that you can either conform or not conform, and it's your choice. I guess Scandinavia, I think, is just the exception that proves the rule.
Exception that proves the rule.
Yeah. That's the thing.
I think also from reading about it, they're also quite minimalistic.
Yeah.
Which means obviously they're not working from fear because they're not in debt most of the time, apart from their homes.
Yeah, true.
But because I think when I don't know. There's actually a lot to unpack.
There is.
This has brought new perspective to my whole analysis of Scandinavia and taking risks.
We can have. Well, I think everyone needs to take risks, and obviously we've said that. I think I've repeated myself probably 3 or 4 times, but I think I'm just trying to get the point across that one, it's okay to fail. 2, you can do whatever you want. You can conform or not conform. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Failing helps you learn. It does. Don't be scared to fail. And obviously listening to me is going to be like, right, from now, this point onwards, I'm not going to be scared to fail. I'm not going to be scared to do anything. I'm scared to do stuff still. Like, I'm sure you're scared to do stuff still. Like, it's human nature to be scared of things. But being scared of things helps us survive. Like, that's entirely what fear is supposed to do. It's supposed to say, okay, you do that, you know, that's a risk to you. You know, you're not supposed to do that. But I think in doing that, that's how we've evolved, in that we took risks and we're like, okay, yes, you know, this is going to help us out in the future. Like, why would we wade into the water? Like, why would we go swimming? There's no need for us to go swimming. You know, everything's here on land. It's cold in the water. We don't want to go in there. But I think wading into deep water is one of the best analogies I can think of to say, like, you can wade into deep water, you're not going to know what's under you. And I know that there are certain people that have that fear of, you know, deep water and that what's under them is kind of really scary. But, you know, what's under you also has, I was going to say feelings, but that's probably not the right word. That what's under you is also, you know, alive. It has its own agenda. Like, you have your own agenda. You can live to what you want to be rather than what other people want you to be. And that it's kind of conforming, but it's also your own thoughts and ideas.
Okay, I just remembered this, by the way.
Go on.
I was still unpacking that whole Scandinavia thing in my head, to be honest. Because, okay, we're talking about fear of the public, fear of the public judgment. Because in Scandinavia, they don't really do jobs for the money aspect. Like, here, people sign themselves to the devil.
It's all about
purely
money.
For money.
Yeah,
especially if you go into like the finance sector, it's one of those cutthroat, white collar. Like, you mess up, you know someone's coming to stab you in the back. There's nothing friendly about it. Nothing friendly about it. And Scandinavians, if they enjoy being a graphic designer, they're happy to live, because they're minimalistic, they're happy to live on $40,000 a year, because they know that their government will support them if anything goes wrong. Like, they have a really good social sort of care system over there.
Yeah.
And they don't care about showing off, because the Jante law doesn't allow them to show off.
Yeah.
So they do a job that they actually love, not out of fear of what people are going to think of them because they don't have the fancy cars, the fancy money.
The fancy money.
And this whole idea of taking a risk and doing entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
If you're actually doing something you love, even if you fail, you're still gonna you're gonna be happy,
comfortable with what you're doing anyway, where you are in life, I guess. But that's the whole.
Even as an entrepreneurial-minded person, I'm very comfortable changing jobs. Even though I know I'm going to be starting back at the bottom, the fear and, like, you know, I don't like being in a job that I don't really enjoy. Like, I'm happy to do it from time to time, but especially with the internet and being able to apply to jobs quite regularly, it's... As long as you don't have that fear of paying off debt, you can really just take time to yourself to find what you enjoy. And I think that is sort of what sort of not living in fear is.
No, yeah. Well, like, there's always going to be jobs.
That made sense.
There's always going to be jobs. There's always going to be jobs available there. Like, honestly, half the stuff that what you just said there, if that makes sense, that's how I felt the entire time, because I'm just talking.
Yeah.
And I think it's coming out of my mouth weird, but that's okay. I mean, I understand it. I'm hoping that other people understand it. And I've kind of just lost my train of thought again, because I've sidetracked or sidestepped, whatever you want to call it. So I don't know what else you want to talk about, but we've kind of gone over, like, people conforming and, you know, fear of failing versus fear of public judgment, which I think those work hand in hand. But but even that applies. Even just, I think just fear in general, because back to you talking about going into the cold water, people fear it because we play these. And it's also coming back to the idea of being in the present moment. Like, we do things out of fear because we're afraid what's going to happen in the future. Like, when we go into a cold ocean, we're not afraid what's going to happen to us at that moment. Like, we know we might get cold, but that's the extent of it, It's
right?
what happens afterwards.
It's the fact that you're thinking, okay, society has told me because it's cold water, I'm going to come out, I'm going to get cold. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to have to take time off work. And yes, this may happen, and scientifically, you know, you probably likely are to get a cold.
Probably, yeah.
But that's not a given.
No.
And the fear of it most likely will actually make you sick. Yep. Because, like, coincidentally, the only time I really listen... Because most of my COVID news comes from friends and family. Like, I don't read in much about it. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
The one time I got sick was kind of a day after I listened to the news. And, like, the whole idea of... Because, you know, the placebos. Yeah. Like, there have been studies on placebos, like, quite a lot. And...
It's called hysteria.
Hysteria.
Yes. It's where there's cases of, like, mimicking symptoms. Because your body, or you're afraid of, like, what's happening. Like, you freak out and you're like... Or your body starts to get a rash, or you start to get a cold or a sniffle. And usually, you know, there's obviously, you know, different chemicals in the air that you sniff, and you're like, oh, gotta sneeze that out. It's the point of that. Your body's trying to get rid of something that it doesn't detect, or not doesn't detect, doesn't recognize. And I think that's kind of, on that note, you getting sick in that moment is probably because you're like, oh, okay, I don't want to get COVID. I'm not necessarily scared of it, but your body goes, oh, okay, this is what it's going to feel like.
But it's like getting into that negative cycle again, because you're fearing it. Even if you don't have any symptoms, the placebo of it, like, your mind is quite a powerful thing. It'll make you think that you're sick even though you're not.
Yeah.
And then and it just ruins, like, the whole idea of fear putting into this negative cycle is what we're trying to say. As long as you can, like, live in the present moment and, like, disregard fear and disregard the thought of other people, you'll live a much happier life, I think.
Yeah.
And you'll live your life, not the life that other people want you to live.
That makes sense to me.
I think we came to a conclusion.
We did come to a conclusion, but
we're, you know,
I think we rambled on a little bit, but if anyone got our point,
there's definitely more to unpack here. So, you know, after you finish listening to this, take some time,
think about it,
unpack it, understand what it means in your own life. This is what it means in our own personal lives. But
I think
it'll apply to you somehow, I think.
And I think this episode will probably be a bit shorter, just because, you know, we're just
trying to stay to one particular topic. So now that this topic sort of, I think we're both comfortable with saying it's come to some sort of
conclusion. It has. Yeah. It's come to an end a little bit.
It's definitely a topic you can continue to talk about, but I think we'll let that thinking up to you.
Talk to your parents.
Yeah. Continue the conversation afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe look at your phone and understand think about,
research.
is it actually...
Research
Is that why you're doing things that you might not be wanting to do because of fear?
Fear's automatic. I fear things. Obviously, you fear things.
Like you said, it's a natural thing. It's for survival.
You can't.
But is that survival keeping us?
I think people
everybody else.
But that's another thing. Side note: we're not finished just yet. Don't
surprise.
Surprise. In terms of like, stuntmen, everything like that. Obviously they're afraid
adrenaline junkies.
Exactly, adrenaline junkies. Like, they can't be afraid of that kind of stuff just because I think they've got it past their head that I can't be afraid of this because I'm doing what I love to do. Like, people love that adrenaline surge.
Because there's that one guy. He's like sponsored by North Face. He does all those free climbing.
Yeah.
And he climbs those ridiculously insane
cliffs,
right?
Yeah.
He's said it before that he has to be present in the moment, because the moment he thinks about what could happen next and the fear of that next step being him falling off the cliff is going to cripple him in the present moment and likely make him fall off the cliff.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's basically climbing this mountain, this cliff, in a meditative state, in a state where he's present in that moment. Otherwise, he will likely die from fear.
I think being present in the moment is not necessarily, like, you can envision yourself falling, right? But I think being present, you do have to worry about the consequences, but you need to realize that those consequences aren't worth as much as what you're about to accomplish. Like, you have the fear of what could happen, but that fear should drive you, not push you away. Because that's the point. The point of evolving to a certain standpoint is that you have to push past that fear, because you know there's consequences coming. Like, I guarantee you, even in that present moment, he's thinking about what could happen. He's like, okay.
I think he's thinking about where does he put his fingers next.
Exactly, but
because he's aware of the dangers, but he's not fearing the dangers. But there's a difference between awareness and fearness.
Actually, that's probably better than what I was about to say, in terms of being aware of what could happen, but not fearing what could happen. I think that's very important, because you should know, like, when you say something, you should know the consequences of what you're about to say, but you shouldn't be afraid to say it. Mm-hmm. I think that's different. Now, that's the ultimate conclusion that I just thought of.
I think so. Because even with the podcast, we're aware of what we're saying.
Yeah.
But we're not fearing the judgment.
We're not really afraid of what...
We're aware that we might be judged, but not afraid of it.
Exactly.
And I think,
that's a good point.
I think that's
the end. We've finished.
Thank you for listening to episode 2.
Hopefully it'll be out soon. I'll make a post on Instagram shortly.
When you're listening to it, it will be out. So
that's true. When you are listening to this, I feel like this is also the end of it. So it's kind of be pointless saying this, but I will make an Instagram post about it soon, and hopefully it'll be up shortly. So we thank you all for listening. Please make sure you give us any feedback on our Instagram. If you know me, message me personally. If you don't, message me via our The Jacob and Seb Podcast Instagram, or at our email, thejacobandsebpodcast@gmail.com. So thanks once again.
I'll see you next time.
Cheers.